Welcome to the Shelf Learner, educating myself with the books from my shelf. Welcome to Shelf Learner, educating myself with the books from my shelf. For those of you who are new to the channel, welcome. And for those of you who have subscribed or you've been to this channel before, welcome back. It's great to start off the second quarter of Historathon with a book that I've had on my TBR for quite some time. The book is Golden Age of the Moor, which was edited by Ivan Van Sertima. This has been on my list for quite some time, and I felt it was appropriate to start off the second quarter from 500 to 1500 AD. But before we start, I'd like to share a quote with you. The quote is a real simple quote: standing on the shoulders of giants. I want you to chew on that throughout the course of this video and how it relates to the Renaissance. I have a book here about Leonardo da Vinci written by Walter Isaacson. Leonardo da Vinci was an iconic figure. I realize that this is covering the third quarter, but standing on the shoulder of giants and how it relates to the Golden Age of the Moor. So let's get started. I want to share with you a couple stories that's happened to me. The first one took place a little more than 10 years ago. I went to a popular brick and mortar bookstore, not going to mention any names, and I went to the counter and I asked the assistant manager if they had any books available on the Moors. And to be quite honest with you, I knew what the answer was going to be, but I just figured I'd ask anyway. So he went to his computer and he started doing his search, and he came back and he said, "Sir, I'd like to apologize, but we don't have any books on the Moors on our shelves." And my reply was, why not? You have books on the Renaissance and other periods of time, but yet why don't you have anything on the Moors? And his response was that nobody has ever requested to purchase a book on the Moors. And I had responded that how can a person request something that they don't know exists? And he kind of scratched his head and he said, "Hey, you can order it online if you want." The second story took place about a year ago, and this was at believe it or not, an African American bookstore. I'm not going to mention any names because there's only a few of them in the country. But this particular African American bookstore, there was a high school age girl working at the counter. She's probably in her 12th year of school. She looked like she was about 17, 18. And I had asked her, I said, "Hey, do you know anything about the Moors?" Again, we're in an African American bookstore, and she didn't know who the Moors were. And I bumped into the manager at the time of the store, and she was about 40-ish. And I had asked her, and she said she really didn't know too much about the Moors. And she kind of responded and said that history is not my thing. I'm into fiction. And I just said, "Oh, hey, thank you, that's okay." So what I'm going to do is we're going to start with who we know now. A lot of you in the audience, most likely from the two stories I shared, you don't know too much about the Moors. So let's start with who we know now, and then we're going to connect it on this journey for the next few minutes, how it relates to the Moors and the takeaways that I got from this book. And hopefully it'll inspire you to want to learn more about the Moors as well. Okay, here we go. Let's talk about some famous people that you most likely know about. Okay, we'll start with the first one. A movie was recently made about this famous singer that had deceased not too long ago, who was known to be the king of pop. Do you know who it is? Okay, you got it. Michael Jackson. You might be saying, how does Michael Jackson tie in with this? Believe me, you'll get the point. Okay, we're going to talk about another one. The other ones I have book references, by the way. I didn't have a Michael Jackson book to show. But here's another one. Michael Jordan. Arguably, he's probably one of the best basketball players of all time. Took the game to a completely whole new level. We have another one, Ben Carson. Ben Carson is a famous neurosurgeon who had taken apart the heads of some Siamese twins. They were connected at the head. We have another one of the greatest soccer players of all time, Pele. At the time, he took the game to a completely new level. Sure, you can recognize this individual, Muhammad Ali, one of the greatest boxers of all time. Beethoven, he was known, believe it or not, as the Black Spaniard. Some people thought that he was a Moor. In textbooks, TVs, and movies, you see him from his European ancestry, but many people don't realize that he also has an African ancestry as well. This one you might not know. He's famous in Russia, Alexander Pushkin. He was kind of like the Shakespeare of Russia as far as poetry, literature. And last but not least, there's so many. Hannibal from Carthage. Many of the Greek Roman scholars have written about him. And he was known as Hannibal the Afar. And if you look up Afar or Afra, that's a dark complexion person that's comparable to like an Ethiopian. But then again, textbooks, TVs, and movies portray him maybe as an European. The reason why I brought this together is because the Moors, starting in 711, when Tariq had invaded Spain, they had ruled from Spain and influenced Europe, believe it or not, for almost 800 years. 800 years, these people have been influential in Europe. And this is the key thing. During a time when Europe was in the Dark Ages. The Dark Ages for Europe was from the 5th to the 10th century. The setting was Rome had collapsed. A lot of people who lived in the urban communities, they fled to the rural communities. They served as serfs. A lot of people lived in kind of like barns and shacks with their animals. No sanitary conditions. And consequently, the intellectual and cultural had regressed. The Catholic Church was in control. And in the 5th century, the Germanic Visigoths had took control of Spain. So it was a dark age in that respect compared to, if you want to compare it to ancient Greece and ancient Rome, they felt that it was kind of like the Dark Ages. But it was also a dark age in a different respect. And by the way, there's a term that they use, is called early Middle Ages or late antiquity. A lot of the scholars, they try to stay away from the term Dark Ages for its connotation. And just to transition to the Moors, the word Moor in Greek and in Roman, Moris, means dark. As a matter of fact, in Spanish, mora means a blackberry. In Italian, it means a Moorish female, Negro. You get the point. These are dark-skinned people. A lot of them were from northern Africa. They were Afro-Arabs, the indigenous Arabs, Muslims, and as well as people all the way from Syria. So you had a mix of people from different shades, but predominantly Moor is associated with like Africoid, Negro type of person. Well, these people were like a beacon of light, and I share with you all these people because they've taken their game, whatever profession they were, whether it was sports, whether it was science, whether it was music, literature, they took it to another level. Well, the Moors, they had set the example for the Dark Ages in Europe. And as a matter of fact, in Cordova, they taught astronomy, mathematics, science, I mean, you name it. People from Europe would go to Cordova, they would go to Spain, and they would learn from the Moors, and they would take the knowledge they had acquired back to their countries. As a matter of fact, the Moorish culture was the first Renaissance. It was an intellectual renaissance of science and mathematics, and also in music as well. That's where you get flamenco and all those and the different instruments. And as a matter of fact, the cities were so well planned. You had streets that were paved for miles, well lit. It was a place that was an example for others to follow. So the Moorish culture inspired universities like Oxford, Cambridge. When you hear those universities, they got their inspiration from the Moorish culture. It's really important to know this information because when you have gone to school, whether it was high school, college, university, what was one of the things that they said that you're not supposed to do? They would slap you on the hand and give you a big F for plagiarism. Well, you hear a lot about the Renaissance, characters about Leonardo da Vinci. But you wouldn't have the Renaissance of 1492 and beyond if they didn't stand on the shoulders of these giants. It's important to know history because oftentimes you may fall into cultural plagiarism or cultural appropriation. And some scholars, they try to poo-poo this and they say, well, hey, we're not going to give that much credit to the Moors because they were basically purveyors of ancient Greek and Roman history. They happen to have the literature from them. Well, if these scholars want to play that game, if you go back, the Greeks, by the way, stood on the shoulders of the giants of the Egyptians. You would have a lot of the famous Greek scholars who would go to Egypt, to the temples of Egypt, to learn from the scholars from them and take it to Greece. And it's a cultural appropriation if you don't get credit to where credit's due. Of course, you can take and learn from a culture and kind of make your own recipe. That's just the way it goes when it comes to art and improvisation. A lot like jazz. But to take a culture and not give the culture credit, like you don't learn about this in schools. You don't learn about this in TV or movies, and if it is portrayed, it's kind of distorted. Just kind of like how they distort Middle East, which is a modern terminology. They throw in Egypt and even Sudan, and they say that it's part of the Middle East. And then you mention it's Africa, and then you see all the pyramids in Egypt and all the they said, hey, it must have been Europeans who did it. We need to get past that. But I don't want to get on my soapbox. I just want to conclude. The takeaway is to appreciate the contributions of the Moors. Again, these people had influenced Europe for nearly 800 years. And it's time that we recognize the contributions that they've made. And also the danger of cultural plagiarism, cultural appropriation. If we get caught up into that slippery slope of stolen legacy, it could also lead to stolen identity. And my question to you, has that ever happened? Or is that just a conspiracy theory? I hope this inspires you to learn more about the culture of the Moors and their contribution. And of course, make it a great day.